Hi there, and welcome to an instructional video on how to use the color palette picker. Now, over on vanillaarts.com, I actually do have this in article format, but artists are visual people. We tend to learn things visually rather than reading about them. And to be perfectly honest, that article there is it's bare bones. It's about the same thing that you get on the back of the color palette picker, just a little bit more fleshed out. But I thought it would be helpful rather than type out 14 pages of instructions on how I actually use it. It might just be easier to film it in video format and let you watch me work with it. Okay, so this is the color palette picker. It comes in the free digital download library, and it's actually 3 pages. So this is one of the 3 pages, PDF format. I would print it on 110-pound cardstock, the heaviest paper that your printer can handle. You don't want to jam your machine, but you do want this to be more than just regular copy paper. So print all 3 sheets, and the one that has the colory rainbow thing, you want this one to print at photo quality so that you get the best rainbow possible. Then you're going to cut it out, and just with scissors is all that I did. Now there's 2 large circles, and I place them front to back, and then that way you've got the rainbow on one side and you have the brief instructions on the other side. And then I laminated the 2 of them together. So I think I just used some double-sided tape to hold them together, and then I fed the whole thing through my laminator. And then the second piece is just that single small dot or small circle. And this one I just ran through by itself. This one doesn't have to be double thickness because it's got that backer board behind it to hold it up. So this one is actually 2 pieces laminated together. And then this one is just the 1 piece laminated together. And I attached them with a brad. So I just poked that brad through the center. And I usually put a piece of tape on the back side to keep that brad from moving around or catching on things, because I used to stick this in my bag and take it to classes. And you don't want it like snagging or ripping things, or creasing your paper that if you're stacking things up. So yeah, that's just how I did it. You'll want to spin it around several times to get the disc moving properly. Now, I invented this kind of spinner tool, but I didn't invent this concept. So this actually goes back all the way to art school, but we didn't have a tool for it. We just talked about the peace sign technique. And really, that's just what you're seeing right here. Here's that straight up and down line here, and then there's 2 that come out just kind of there. And we just kind of mentally did this, but actually I tried to explain this to a local class. Just make a peace sign in your mind against the color wheel in your mind. It was just a lot. So that's where the tool finally came from, but it's just based on this general concept. I'm not going to claim it as my own. I just popped this together as just a visual aid for students. So why do you need a visual aid? Because there are lots of color palette options out there. This is just one of them. So this is the Sarah Renee Clark color cube, and this is the physical color cube. She also has a digital version, so I have both 1 and 2. I don't think there's a 3 yet, but I can link to this along with the information in the description area. And I hate to say it, but I kind of like the digital one better because I can just hit red and get a bunch of red options. Whereas with all these cards, like here, I pulled out one that doesn't have red to it. So that's why I kind of like the digital one better. But I also do cards, similar, same concept, but similar. And I'm just like trying to find one that's easy to talk about, and I keep getting some abstract things. Okay, here we go. I did a color palette out of this one before too. We're using some of the same photos. All right, so here it is. Here's Sarah Renee's version, and she gives you some information on the back. I base mine for Copic colors. So I give you the markers, and then I give you a push and pull. She's doing 6 combinations. Does she always do 6? I think she does always do 6. And oh no, there's 5 for a turtle. Okay, so she does 5 or 6. I always do 3 Copic colors and a pencil push and a pencil pull, so that's your shade and your highlight. And I try and pick those pencils that work over all of the other colors. Okay, so the problem that people have with using this or mine is that I often hear from people that, well, dear Amy, can you do one that has a goat in it? Because I have I just picked a goat at random here, but I have a digital stamp of a goat and I need a color palette that's especially for goats. I think people think a little bit too literally, like I can only use this when I'm coloring buildings. And for mine up there, I can only use this when I'm coloring strawberries. And that's not the intention. The intention is to show you that these color palettes are around in everyday life, everywhere, if you're paying attention, if you see them. And I do. I literally, every once in a while, I will stop and snap something, a photo of something with my phone, because I look at it and I think, oh my goodness, that fabric is a great color palette. Or you'll be in a store and that teacup sitting next to that placemat makes a beautiful color palette. So if you're attuned to this and you know to look for them, it's easy. But it's not like I take a photo of the teacup on the placemat and then I go home and I do a teacup and a placemat. That's the step that I think beginner colorers are a little bit more nervous about. So what I'm afraid of is that people are like leafing through here because you know you're coloring a fish and you're only pulling out cards that have fishes on them, where this is a very good color palette, but because it's identified with balloons, you don't know that you can use it on a tropical fish. So in that sense, if you're somebody who's very literal, or if you're somebody who legitimately you have a billy goat stamp and you just don't know what to do with it, sometimes it is more interesting, more convenient, and more creative to do your own color palettes. And that's where this thing kind of comes in. So I'm just going to walk you through some sample projects. I'm not going to color a full project because that would be here all day. But what I've done is, just a few minutes before we started here, I just drew some 3x3 squares with just a regular old pencil, and I am on some scrap paper here. This isn't coloring paper. This is just cardstock that happened to be handy, and that's what I happen to be using. I really do recommend that when you're using this tool, you use it in conjunction with some squares. Now, for this video, I sat down with a ruler and I measured out 3x3 boxes, and that's just a perfect little 1-inch gap between them. But honestly, when I'm doing this on my own, I grab the grubbiest piece of paper, which probably has coloring on the side of it, and I just do a bunch of comp boxes is what we call them. And that's literally what I will, that's normally what I'd be testing at. And these are maybe 1.5 inches by an inch and a half. Notice I was like talking when I drew those. So this is Amy's standard size. You don't want to do anything too big because we're just looking at how the colors are bouncing off of each other. We're not trying to be super precise. You're not practicing. You're just practicing what these colors could possibly look like. Okay, so let's just generic project. All right, we're going to do a heart. I'm just trying to think of something super simple that everybody can identify with. So here's my heart. And this is, maybe you're just doing this for the front of a card or something. And super simple. Our main object is our special color. So we're going to take that and we're going to rotate it around until we get to the red section. But I think it's actually easier to say, well, okay, I want to color a red heart. What do I feel like today? I'm going to, and I'm just reaching over into my red collection here. Okay, so I have grabbed R14. And let's just say that that's the color, that's my favorite color, red. It's not, but let's just pretend that this is what I'm feeling like today. I want to color a heart that is R14. So there we go. Now maybe that R14 heart is shaded with a little bit of R17. Notice I'm not doing my best coloring here. I'm just pushing these colors into the paper. And you might have 3 or 4 heart tests here. I'm only going to do one. Okay, so there's our heart, and I'm going to erase these lines. So then you're wondering, okay, what else do I do with my red heart? Okay, so R14 happens to be kind of an orangish red. So I'm going to move that special color arrow because that's our main object, the focal point of our project. I'm going to move that over into kind of that area here where the red starts to turn into the scarlet area. This is technically scarlet more than red. Okay, so it's kind of, it's over towards yellow red, but not really. And by the way, I need to point out to you that this is a nice rainbow spectrum here, but notice I've put the names of the Copic color families along the side here. Earth is not a hue. Earth is a mixture. Brown is a mixture. So brown, you won't find that on the color wheel. But notice that these are not regularly spaced, because Copic, when they designed their color groups, they didn't try to color evenly space them. So the blue violet and the violet here, this is actually a purpley kind of color here, but they're very close together. So is the green and the blue green. And then this blue family spans everything from cyan over here. But just know that they're not supposed to be evenly spaced because the Copic families are not evenly spaced precisely apart. Okay, so back to that heart that we were working on. And we're kind of in that scarlet area. Special color points to our focal point. And then the opposite is the complement, and we've talked about that in the color theory lessons. So a good background for our red heart is something kind of in this cyan group. Now, I could just go through and pull out, okay, so something in this cyan group would be B04. And here's that R14. So here's our focal point color. And then here is the complement. And I'll just put those like that so that makes a little bit more sense. And this could be a very good background. But I want you to be aware of the value of colors. And it's just that last number on the marker. You want to avoid coloring everything in your project. In this case, we don't want everything to end in a number 4. This method, and I'm going to warn you, if you're one of those people that when you color that heart, you color it with every red from 9 to quad 0, this wheel is not going to work for you because you're using too many values there. I want you to generally break your values up into value groups of, like, some of those markers are marked with a 10, so that's why I didn't start with number 9, because yeah, we do have the T10, W10, C10. Those are the darkest values in the Copic group. So anything from 10 to 7, that last number on there, is generally a dark color. You could consider 6 a dark, maybe. These are loose groups, but just kind of in that 10 to 7 area, that's your dark group. Everything that's kind of in that middle range, 6 to 3, that's your medium colors. And then everything from 2 to all of those sub-zeros, that's your light range. When you're coloring a project, if you look down and every marker on your desk is ending with the same, like 4, 5, 3, those in that tight little range there, then you got a problem. So you want to space these out. So I would not use B04 for the background of something that is R14, because these two colors, complements, fight each other. They're oppositional, so they're going to have some conflict there. But you can reduce that conflict by, let's just take this B04 out, and we're going to sub in B00. Now look, we just changed that value, and now there's still a little bit of tension there, but they get along a lot better. So this could be a very good heart color, and then this could be an excellent background color. And I just found it by popping the complement in there. Now, it doesn't have to be 04. You don't have to worry about matching that first number on the marker, so you don't have to choose B14. Is that even a color? Yeah, that is a color. So we're just trying to get something that is from the opposite side, that is a slightly different value group, so that these two can kind of work together. But you can also move over just a little bit. So maybe we want to get something that's just a little bit more in the blue-green family. So like, let's see, the R14, we want to subtract a couple. So how about BG11? That might be a pretty good background, kind of like that. So you're see how we're just kind of on our comp sheet here. We are just kind of bouncing that idea of, should we do a blue sky blue or more of a blue green? Or what if we go a couple darker? So 14 ends in a 4. Let's find something that ends in a 7. So what would that heart look like up against a BG, what is this? 5-7. If that's your cup of tea, then do that. I'm kind of leaning towards that BG11. So there we go. I like this combination right there. That's pretty good. Now let's say that there's some, I don't know, confetti that's floating around the heart. There's got to be something like else in the image. So what can we do for that? Then, okay, so we got our heart, and then we've got our background color. These accent colors, you can do one or you can do both. You don't have to do both of them, but an accent color could come from here. This is a good option for some confetti, or maybe you do some confetti from here and some confetti from here. And remember, you don't want to do the same group, the value group. So we're going to choose something that's a little bit darker. So I'm just grabbing, here's B37, and maybe that's the confetti that's floating around. So our color palette here is that scarlet red, and then we shaded with a slightly darker, and then here's that background color. And then here's that confetti color. And maybe we do 2 confetti colors. So what would be something over here? Oh, I don't know. Not really going up into the yellow-green category. I got to be in the GG area. So here's a... Do you like it? This is what this is for, to decide if you like it, and I don't love it. So what does this one look like? That one's a little better. So what is this one? This one is G16. So there, we just created a color palette. We've got 2 scarlets for our heart. We have a background color, and we have some confetti colors. And that's a color palette that we just invented, poof, out of nowhere. We didn't have to use a color system to get there, but it's custom to our project, and I bet you nobody has ever used that palette before. It's something that's unique and special to what you're doing. Okay, so honestly, we could color that red heart. We could color it purple. We could color it blue. There's lots of different colors that we could color the heart. Let's do something that has to be colored a particular color. So I'm just thinking of Black-Eyed Susans. For something to look like it's a Black-Eyed Susan, it really does need to have that brown center to it. And then I need a yellow. Now see, we're not doing our best coloring, we're not doing our best drawing, because we are just looking at the color palette here. Okay, so we've got that Black-Eyed Susan, and we're using Y18, and then the center is E57. So this is absolutely mandatory, let's say, for a Black-Eyed Susan. Let's say you're sending something to Susan who just got hit in the eye. So you're sending her this card, and it has to be a black-eyed Susan. All right, so we've got this yellow and this brown that we know we absolutely have to use. And let's say in that image, there is also a leaf. Okay, so let's say the focal point is that yellow, and the yellow is kind of sitting right there. That's our special color. Remember, brown isn't on the wheel, so that's almost like a freebie. You can just have that one, but it's not really part of the main color palette. Okay, so our oppositional color is something between the blue and the blue-violet family. So you could color something super dark, like a super dark background. I just here. We could have a background that is a deep, dark navy blue. That really pops. Or we could go gentle. We could go gentle with something that is a bit lighter. This is, ooh, I kind of like that. What is this? B63. I kind of like that. Something's going to hit you. You know, you have taste, you have style, you have preferences, and that's what you're going to go with. Okay, so this is our palette so far. We've got the brown from the center, we've got the yellow there, and we have a nice blue background there. Kind of liking that. Let's give ourselves a field there to work with. Double checking, just making sure this one ends in a 3, this one ends in an 8, this one ends in a 7. So we're not all, remember, we want to make sure that we're choosing colors from each one of those value groups. We don't want everything hanging out in the same value zone. So far we're doing pretty good. Now remember, we have that leaf, and leaves do not look like leaves if you color them this color or this color, but that's where our accents end up at. So what do? Do you have to color the leaf purple? Well, that just doesn't make sense. It's not going to look like a leaf. Everybody's going to wonder, what's wrong with Amy? Was she drunk when she colored that? Why is the leaf purple? So no, that's not what we're doing. But we can use these accent colors to kind of influence how we color that green leaf. We know it has to be green. So what we can do is we can kind of like inch our accent upwards just a bit to try and encompass some of those green colors. So we could color the leaf a green that leans towards blue. So a green that leans towards blue. Well, let me look at, this is G17. I'm looking for like that weird Viridian color. And I think the G17 is actually pretty good. Okay, so we can color it. It's green, but it's just kind of leaning in towards, it's leaning towards the blue rather than picking a chartreuse color. That's the point here. So we've got that E57, Y18, B63, G17. That's not going to work because we've got all three of these guys end in a 7 or 8. That's too many that are all clumped in together. So I need to find something for my leaf that is slightly lighter. I'm never thrilled with Copic G's. Kind of painted myself into a corner by choosing that. I'm looking, oh, here we go. This is a little bit cooler. Okay, there we go. I like this. All right, so I've got the E57, the Y18 are in the dark family. Now I've got the background of B63 and a G24. That's kind of nice. There we go. Yeah, that fits in. And here's where you may decide that maybe the background could go even lighter. So instead of B63, what does it look like if we go even lighter with the B60? Ooh, that's kind of nice right there. And that gives us, yeah, I kind of like that. And then if there is, Some slightly darker there. And what's my green here? 2-4. So, I don't know, 4-6. That kind of works. Bluish greens. There. Okay, so my color palette that we just invented here. Brown for the center of the Susan. There's that petal color. We have leaf color. And we'll throw in the other leaf color. And then here is the background color. There we go. Easy peasy. All right, so what about another scenario? And I think people tend to, sometimes the thing can only be colored just the one thing. So a leaf, like I said, leaves are going to always give us a little bit of trouble because it has to stay in that green family. So let's say you're doing just a leaf and you need something for the background. And let's just say it's a stamp that is a bunch of green leaves on a dark background. What we can do is we can play around with the color palette picker. Now, normally we would say, okay, my favorite green is, I'm just going to throw this down here, GO3, and that's what you want to do. So you'd take your focal point color, the special color, and you would point it to where that kind of GO4 color resides. And then this is telling you that all the other leaves should be these colors, but you don't want to do a fall leaf. We want to do something for spring. So here's where we can get a little bit silly and we can just flip. So the green is in the complement space. And now we've got a lot of options for green leaves of various flavors. So we've got this green leaf. And then we can do one that is, here's another green leaf in the picture. And then we can even grab a yellow green leaf. And you'll have to play around with greens that make you happy. But see how we're finding various greens in this area over here. And then when it comes time to the background, we're pointing towards red violet. So let's choose a really, really light red violet color. Let's just see what RV91 looks like over here. That's kind of interesting. Or maybe we could go more pure with the color. And here's a fresh pink, I guess. And then remember, some of the R's also have that kind of pink flavor to them. So what if I did, let's choose R01. This is going to be warmer than these two, but that might be kind of, ooh, I like that. So this is flip-flopping so that we have more greens to choose from. I don't know why you would have an image that has 6 red fire hydrants in it, but that would be another similar scenario where you just need a lot of reds to work with. So you can flip it over, and this is your group of main objects, and then there's your background or accent color. So what was this color palette here? I threw a bunch of stuff down. My background here is this R01. And then we just have a bunch of interesting greens to go with it. And there's that color palette. Okay, so far we've been doing fairly simplistic ones. Here's where things get a little bit more complicated. Let's say that we're doing a wine themed image. All right, so we've got, here's our wine glass. Remember, you don't have to be an artist to just give us a rough sketch of what we're doing here. So here's our wine glass, and then let's say in the image there's a bunch of grapes next to it, and then the grapes have a leaf that's coming off of it. So this is the image that we're trying to color. How do we use the color palette to do that? Well, you have to decide right away, do I want red wine or do I want green wine? Because to me, that's going to be the first major decision there. Is this going to be a glass of red wine or a glass of white wine? And then I think that influences what those grapes are, because I don't think I would put a glass of red wine here with green Chardonnay grapes here. So let's just say it's going to be red wine, and red wine is over here. Let me just choose that color. I don't know. 5, 6. Yeah, it's a little pinkish. I don't think I would drink that wine. It still feels a little brown. There we go. What is this? This is 89. Okay, so we're set in stone on that. It has to be that color. And quite frequently, when I'm coming up with these color palettes, I always have one thing in the image that just absolutely has to be that color. So it's kind of that Bordeaux kind of color is sitting in here. I know it doesn't match. It's darker than what's here, but this is generally the kind of area that it's coming from. So these are all the suggestions that we have to work with. And I guess, yeah, we could color those as green grapes, but it's a little weird for me. Plus, I don't think I want to do green grapes and a green leaf there. What if we did... I'm just thinking here, trying to figure this, because this is exactly what I would do on my own. But, RV 99 is a little strong there. I'm just thinking about moving this out of the red family and over in, ooh, there we go. Okay, so what if I move this over, this is RV 69 now. That feels even more, yeah, so now I'm over here, and that gives me some more colors. I kind of like that, a little bit more color to work with. But our violet, it's still there. Okay. But what if we do, okay, so we've got our grapes going on here, but then we pull in some from over here, blue. I'm just going to grab a B69 here, or B79. And we're putting blue accents on those grapes. And maybe there's a dark blue underpaint for the wine. That gets us that blue kind of color. Then this is G46, which kind of fits in there. So there's that. B79, RV69, G46. So that works. We've got 2 in the dark. We got 1 in the medium. We need some light colors in this. So a color for the glass, we could do blue-green glass. So we got some BG10 for the glass. So here's where we're going so far. And then you want to lighten and brighten it up maybe. I don't know. It feels like it's all pretty somber. What do we have over here? Like I said, I don't want to go with that Chardonnay grape color. But what if I scooch it over that way and pick up something in here? I want to do a yellow background, but maybe something that's kind of antique. I'll just throw that. Actually, the 21 isn't bad, but what if it's like kind of a parchment? So let's move over into, we want kind of a yellowy brown. Remember those neutrals also work. That's interesting. What is this one? E51. Is there a lighter one? I'm going to grab E50 and E81 because they both have some yellowy green tones in them. E50. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. That gives us that kind of antique parchment look to it. There we go. I kind of like that. All right, so here's our wine image. All right, so our wine color palette is RV69, B79, G46. The glass is coming in with a BG10, and then we have E81. And that's kind of an interesting color palette. Again, original to our project that we were working on. Now, under no circumstances am I suggesting that you single coat everything here. When you're coloring the wine, you're going to pull out some other colors to work with this marker. That's kind of the underpaint of the B79, but maybe we also involve some RV66. I'm just throwing other markers out here. You're going to develop a whole wine blending combination, and then you're going to develop a whole leaf blending combination. So I'm not saying that your coloring is just these 5 colors and that only. This is just the jumping point to start the general color palette, and then you take this general color palette and you break it down and you come up with blending combinations for each color in the palette. Just like with the Black-Eyed Susan up here. You're going to have several browns to color that center. You're going to have several yellows that I already started us on. Several yellows for the petals. Here's those green colors. And then the background. Now, what I don't want you to do is stray then from that beautiful color palette that you've got created. So this one here is very cohesive. I really like that. It feels like it could cover things, but let's say there's something else in the image. What else could be in this image? Let's say there's a ladybug in this image. Or maybe that's a bad example because the ladybug kind of has to be read to read as that. Let's say there's a butterfly. Okay, so there's a little butterfly that is hanging out on the Black-Eyed Susan. Okay, so world's worst butterfly. But let's just think this through. We don't want to introduce all of a sudden hot pink into this image. Maybe you do. Maybe you're looking at that and you're like, yeah, I could see pink fitting in really well with it. But for the most part, since we're sending this to Susan, we want the Black-Eyed Susan to be the focal point. So what I'm tempted to do is find, where is it on my desk here? I'm tempted to use one of my other existing colors here. And here's that B63. And maybe that's the color that I do the butterfly. Now that's very, very subtle. Just so they don't look like hearts. Sorry about that. Yeah, I know the temptation is to do that in pink, but that doesn't look like a cohesive color palette to me anymore. So I'm tempted to have you just stick there. I mean, rules are meant to be broken, but to me, this just feels better. And maybe you don't want it to be quite so close to the background. So let's find B66 would give us an even darker. Oh, here we go. Yeah, this is what Amy would do. That's my butterfly because it's kind of fitting in with the background. This is B66. and this was B60. So that's where my butterfly is going, because I still want it to read as that nice color palette that we had here. So to introduce an orange or a chartreuse butterfly at this point, not something that I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. And if you're a card maker, I also would be picking my little gems and sparkles or my stickles to stick in that original color palette. So if I'm going to put some little sequins on this, some gems of some sort, I'm picking gems that are coming from that color palette. I'm picking, you know, if I'm going to add magic sparkles in the background, I'm picking something that already resides within that color palette. Maybe I'm picking something that's a lighter blue or something that's a darker, like a dark brown, lumpy bumper. I don't make cards, so I don't know the names of all these tools that you use, but you're going to choose things from within the color palette family. That way you're sticking to it, you're making it really cohesive, because just introducing some wild color at the last minute doesn't always mesh really well, unless you love the look of that, because then, you know, do what you want to do. But I tend to stick to that original color palette pretty faithfully, unless I've got a really, really, really good reason to deviate from it. Colors that are free spaces. We talked about it a little bit before. Neutrals are free spaces. So you can throw a gray in to any of these at any time if you need another color. See how, look, it's just a neutral. It works there. The neutral works here. This neutral is going to work on every single one. So you can add grays or browns to the color palette willy-nilly. That really does. I mean, that looks really nice to me. I like that. I wasn't so in love with it just there, but then once I added that gray, I do like that. And for the record, that was C3. It works in all of these. So you can throw in those neutrals. The other thing that are neutrals, not technically, but basically for the most part, is metallics. So you can throw some silver and gold in there. So maybe that butterfly ends up being a blue butterfly with gold accents, or you throw some gold stickles in the background to make cute little magic things. So these are freebies. Any neutral, and a neutral can be the brown or it can be a gray, and metallics. And then also there's always white. You can throw white in there at any point. So there's those little magical white accents that you could do. So these are all neutrals: grays, browns, metallics, or white. I think that's all I wanted to show you. Okay, so I hope this was helpful and informative. Leave a comment if you have a question, or we can talk about it over on the Facebook group as well. All right, thank you everybody, and happy palette picking. All right, have a great day. Bye.